to United Astronomy Clubs of New Jersey. We are here live once again in Jenny Jump State Forest in Hope, New Jersey. And I want to thank everyone who is joining us, whether here or online, because that's right, we do live stream these to both Twitch and YouTube. And one of the best ways, if you're looking for some entertainment on a Saturday night, but you can't make it out here, is to join us in chat, say hi, ask questions, and learn a little bit about science and astronomy. Well, I'm waiting to see if anyone's finishing parking because we are indoors and I cannot see through walls like Superman. So to give them a little time, if they're finishing up parking, to wander down in here since we are indoors. I want to encourage everyone to check us out on our website, uacnj.org. It's where you're going to find a list of all our member clubs because we are a club made up of other clubs, and one of the easiest ways to get into astronomy is to find and join your local club, if not only for ease of use, but also for all those tips and tricks that are more relevant to your area where you live. Because let's face it, the tips and tricks I know for out here in Warren County, New Jersey, might not necessarily be so helpful for those who live in more populated areas like New York City, Scranton, and the likes. Or also, if they live in darker areas of town names I can't think of at the moment. You can also follow us on our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram. We have a Discord server, all great places to keep up with neat things we're doing, any current events, as well as ask any questions, or if you just want to show off your latest astrophotography. So, since I forgot the next thing I was going to say, that train has derailed upon leaving the station, I'm just going to move into the next thing that I know we need to do, which is the safety briefing, which is inescapable. If anyone needs to use the restroom, that is the porta potty outside. It is big, it is blue, it is illuminated by red. We do ask that everyone use their headlights when leaving because no one wants to get run over and it is quite foggy out. We also ask that any flashlights, pointers, any camera, phone lights, try and keep those pointed towards the ground because we do not want to blind anyone. We do have a museum and gift shop area. You might have noticed it as you walked into the building since we are inside versus outside. So, you're not here to listen to me blabber on for forever. You're actually here to learn about the Gateway Remote Telescope, which is the opposite of how I think I phrased it in the title that I posted, where it was Remote Gateway Telescope. So I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
But you're here to listen to Stan Honda. Stan Honda is a photojournalist with over 37 years of experience in New York City and Southern California. Of the international news, politics, and sporting events he covered, photographing the space shuttle launches and landings rate as some of his favorites. Over the past few years, he has worked on night sky landscapes and other astronomical images taken in locations around the world and even in New York City. He has been a National Park Service artist in residence in 5 national parks, and Stan's photos have appeared in NASA's Astronomy Picture of the Day website, Sky and Telescope magazine, and NationalGeographic.com. He has 3 solo gallery. You've had more than 3 by now. 3 solo gallery shows of his work.
Yeah, just a few more.
Yeah, I'm like, wait a minute. I feel like that number has grown since I gave this last. And he's been a board member of the Amateur Astronomer Association of New York and has in past represented them on the UACNJ Board of Directors. And with that, here's Stan.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks for the invitation to speak here at UACNJ. It's been a while since I've come, so this is great to see the whole facility and everything. So I'll be talking about our Gateway Remote Telescope. I'm with the Amateur Astronomers Association in New York, the AAA, and I think we're somewhat unique in astronomy clubs in that we have our own remote telescope setup. And I'll tell you a little bit tonight about the whole setup we have and how it came to be. You might have seen the May 2026 issue of Sky and Telescope. So we were on the cover. One of our members did an article for Sky and Telescope about our remote telescope project, and they liked it so much they put an image from one of our operators, and they put the topic on the cover of the magazine. So that was a very, very big surprise for us. Most of the article was about the collaboration that the members do among themselves to create pretty deep looks at a lot of the objects. Within AAA, we have an astrophotography group. It's sort of a subgroup of the club, and it's quite an active group. It's probably one of the more active groups within AAA. We've got a Google group email that's pretty active. People do a lot of posting of images. They ask and answer a lot of questions. So people use the astrophotography group email as a resource. So that's always really good. And the remote telescope project was an offshoot of our astrophotography group. We kind of formed the idea, and we implemented everything, and we're running it through the astrophotography group part of the AAA. So if you go to AAA.org, and not AAA.com, that's the Auto Club, but AAA.org is the club website. Click on Gateway, and you'll see our Gateway Remote Telescope page. We have several pages that you can you can take a look at, and I'll go over those a little bit later in the talk. And you could find out a lot about the telescope by just looking at those pages. If you have any more questions, you could always email us. So let me go over just sort of the timeline. It was kind of an interesting story how this all came about. The first idea came about in 2023 in April at the NEAF conference, the Northeast Astronomical Forum, and this was the first in-person meeting that they had in a couple of years since the pandemic. So Alfredo Villegas, who was a board member of the AAA at the time and also active with the astrophotography group, came to me and some other people in the group and said, "What do you think about having a AAA remote telescope?" And he said, we've got funds in the club that can help pay for some of the equipment. And he said, it's starting to get very popular. There are hosting sites that'll host your telescope. They'll in places with very dark skies, and then we would access it over the internet with computer programs. So I wasn't that familiar with how things worked. I knew that there were a lot of remote telescopes out there, but to me, it just sounded like a great idea. Since we have the knowledge of the astrophotography group members, so that really helped. So the next few months, we formed a committee, and we got a lot of people on board to come up with some ideas. As it turns out, there were 3 of the AAA members, 2 of them who were currently running remote telescopes, one in New Mexico and one in Chile, and then a third member who had just taken down his remote telescope. He was, I think, positioning it, trying to put it in another location. So these are people who had hands-on experience, and so they knew how the whole system worked with the different remote telescopes and how we could go about doing it. As we're coming up with ideas, we were thinking at least probably a 1-year timeline in terms of getting together, raising some of the money, buying the equipment, or deciding on the equipment. There's, as you know, there's probably a million different pieces of equipment for each segment that you can get. And so we were just expecting about a year until we could finally go online with the remote telescope. In July of that year, Alfredo was on Cloudy Nights, and he started to have a conversation with another amateur astronomer named John Kasianowicz. John had posted something on Cloudy Nights saying that he had a remote telescope in West Texas that that he's offering for anybody to use. And as it turns out, he really wanted to try to have a astronomy club use the telescope because it would benefit the club, and he also wanted to try to make sure that the club would try to use it for some sort of outreach work. And so Alfredo began talking with them, and then myself, Alfredo, and a third member, Preston Staley, we talked to John about his ideas, what he's thinking, and we decided this is a perfect fit. He was willing to let us use his rig, which was already set up in West Texas. We could use the equipment for no charge. We would just take over the pier rental fee at the site in West Texas, which at that time was about $8,000 a year. But we wouldn't have to go out and buy a whole lot of equipment and install it at the site, which is a pretty big undertaking. John said he was willing to do all of the maintenance on the telescopes. He's out in West Texas several times a year, so he was willing to do the upkeep, which was another big factor for us. Upon hearing that, our AAA member Antoine Ribot donated a small AT60 60 millimeter refractor telescope that I think he won at a raffle at a Texas Star party, and he didn't really have any use for it, so he said he'll donate that to the club. So we decided that we could piggyback that on one of John's telescopes, and then get a one-shot color camera, so that we could have two different kinds of files coming out of the telescope. John's telescope had a mono telescope that just shot black and white. You needed color filters to make a color image. We thought for people first starting out, for novice people who really want to get into astrophotography, the one-shot color files might be easier initially to work with. You didn't have to really deal with combining the red, green, and blue into different kinds of filters. So we decided on that, and in August we purchased a ZWO, an ASI 2600 one-shot color with the accessories, a filter wheel, focuser, and things like that, in order to make a pretty nice working model of a color telescope. And then late in August, early September, Antoine, myself, and John Kasianowicz met in Fort Davis, Texas. That's the closest town near where the telescope is. And we set out to install the telescope, the AT60, on John's rig. And this is the first time Antoine and I would be able to get to see the whole setup in West Texas. So here's a map of the far western part of Texas. If you go a little bit diagonally up from this map, you'll get to El Paso, Texas. So that's the closest major airport to fly into. Fort Davis is the town that is closest to the telescope. That's kind of in the lower right-hand part of the map, and the site itself is in the Davis Mountains. From the site, you can actually, in the far distance, you can actually see the McDonald Observatory. So it shares the same sky as the McDonald Observatory. So we knew that the skies were pretty good, and that the man who's operating the system whose name is actually Preston Starr. Starr is his last name, so it's a funny coincidence that he's running a hosting site for remote telescopes. The site is pretty similar to those of you who have seen remote telescope sites. Two sheds, and he has a plan to build a third one. There's actually a lot of interest in his site, so he's getting inquiries about having more telescopes there. They have roll-off roofs, and so they're I think fairly standard looking for a lot of the remote telescope sites. The view to the south is pretty wide open. You can a couple days that we were there was quite clear, and so he was pointing out things that were across the Mexican border from there, which is I think at least about 150 miles or so away from the site. The site itself is at about 6,000 feet in altitude, so it's got a couple great things working for it. The altitude is high, and it's in a part of Texas where the weather itself is generally pretty good. The winds are the only factor that's that's been a problem over the couple of years, where oftentimes high winds will keep the roof closed. But other than that, the skies themselves are pretty clear. Here's John on the left and Antoine on the right installing the AT60 and the camera and everything on, piggybacking it onto the mount where John's telescope is, and he has a quite good telescope that he was letting us use, an Astrophysics 175, which is a very high-end telescope. I'll show you a list of the equipment in a couple slides. So here's our little telescope. The telescope itself, the AT60, turns out to be about the size of the Takahashi refractor that John was using as a guide scope. So it's sort of comical to see the two small telescopes on the same mount. And so the ZWO camera is mounted on the back of that refractor, as well as a filter wheel and the focuser that we got. And it's I think there are about 10 to 12 piers in each of the sheds that Preston Star has set up, and so these are all these are telescopes during the day as we were doing the installation in the shed. At night, when the roof rolls off, you get a pretty nice view of the Texas sky. The time that we were there, the moon was pretty large, so that's the light that you see in this picture. But even with the moon fairly bright, there at least in the photograph and to our eye, we could still see quite a number of stars up in the sky. So that was good news, that you could see that many stars when there was a pretty bright moon out. So here's the list of the equipment that John's on. So this is his rig that he had already installed, and he had been using this for several years. The telescope's an Astrophysics 175, running out at f8, and he's got a 10 micron mount, which is very very high end mount. We were pretty impressed with the list of equipment that he had, because it's something that as a club, I don't think that we definitely would not have been able to afford this quality of equipment, definitely on a smaller scale, smaller size. So it was great that Alfredo would run into John on cloudy nights. He's got the whole set of filters, Finger Lakes instrumentation, Microline CCD camera. It's an older camera. John tends to like the older CCD cameras, and so far it's been working pretty good. There were a couple odd problems over the past couple years that we managed to fix, and then John has been out there a couple times a year to do maintenance on the telescope itself. The smaller telescope that we have is the AT60. That's Antoine's telescope, running at f5. And there's the ZWO ASI 2600 camera, the one-shot color camera, and with a couple of filters that two members had donated to the cause. So it was nice to get a lot more people involved in the project. So continuing with the timeline, so now we're into September. One of our committee members, Preston Staley, he named the project Gateway. So now we had a name. Instead of just calling it the Remote Telescope, well, we had a name, so we're calling it the Gateway Remote Telescope. And we had about a month and a half to essentially put together something that we've never done before. In other words, get a remote telescope that we could essentially sell memberships to get people to pay for it, and then have it set up so that people get training on the software and training on, and then figuring out where we were going to upload these files and how we were going to do that. So it was a pretty hectic month and a half trying to get all this stuff together. And essentially we didn't know what we were doing, and now that we've done it once, I think we kind of have this idea that if we were going to do more, we're a little bit more equipped to deal with a lot of the small things that need to be done. The one big factor was that there's a program called NINA that runs remote telescopes remotely. So from your computer at home, you could be running the telescope here in Fort Davis, Texas. So you don't really have to be anywhere near it. So we had training with a woman named Linda Thomas Fowler. She helps run a lot of the telescopes that John has installed. He actually has about 4 or 5 telescopes in different locations installed. So she's sort of the software engineer on that. I think her what she does is some sort of software engineering. So she really knows the NINA program inside and out. And it was great to have her as a teacher to train the people who wanted to actually operate the telescope. We set up a couple of different tiers, and one of them was to actually operate the telescope itself, and that would be at one fee level, and then there'd be two other tiers where you wouldn't operate the telescope. You could have input into the targets, or you could just have access to the data. We kind of wanted to make several levels depending on how much you wanted to get involved with the remote telescope. So we had sort of a soft opening in mid-October where the really interested people could kind of log on. They can test out the telescope, start photographing some images, getting data, seeing how everything works. And on November 1st, we officially went online, and we had started. At that point, we just called it the Gateway Remote Telescope. Since we just had one telescope, one setup in Fort Davis. In addition to the images that were being produced by the two refractors, the AP175 and the AT60, we had images that had been produced over the last year by the Saravolo telescope, which is a super high-end reflector, and another one of John's telescope that's in one of the other sheds at the Fort Davis site. So that was interesting to have that set of data as well as the images that were being produced by the two refractor telescopes. So people could get a lot of practice on different kinds of data through a few different kinds of telescopes, and that was exciting to us. So here's a few images from our members, and let's see. This was the M8 and the M20, the Lagoon and the Trifid nebulas, and these are from the Texas telescope, which we now call the Gateway North, and a black and white image of the Horsehead Nebula and the surrounding area. And then M94, which was from the set of data from the Saravolo telescope. So it's a much longer focal length, so it can get different types of objects. And so we were interested in looking through that whole set of data. And I think they provided us with about 35 different objects, which is great. It kind of started up immediately. Our library had a fair number of objects that people can access. And so meanwhile, in the southern hemisphere, one of our members, Antoine Ribaud, he was one of the fellows in the picture who was helping install the AT60. He was running a telescope in Chile, and he came to us actually about a year later. He came and said, would you be interested in having my telescope be part of the AAA remote telescope? And you can have a telescope in the southern hemisphere. And he was willing to do the same kind of deal that we did with John Kasianowicz with his telescope in Texas, that we'd be able to use all his instruments for no fee. We just take over the payment for the pier rental at the site. So his site is in the Rio Hurtado Valley in Chile, and there's a couple of the more well-known mountains a little bit north of his site, Cerro Panchon and Cerro Tolodo, where some of the big astronomical observatories have been built or are just coming online now. So that was sort of exciting to be in this region of Chile and to be under similar skies. Antoine also had pretty nice equipment. He also has an Astrophysics 130, slightly smaller telescope, but a more up-to-date camera, a CMOS camera has a full frame sensor. So He's was running his astrophysics at about 860 millimeters. Also had a 10 micron mount, so very solid mount. His camera is a QHY 600, and has a full frame chip on a full frame 35 millimeter chip, so much bigger chip, giant files. I think for a while some people were complaining because the downloads of the files actually took quite a while, because especially if we produced a lot of images from one object, the actual size of the data would be pretty huge. And he's got the usual filters, RGB filters and also the narrowband filters. And he was also running Nina. So we had Linda help us with configuring the Nina program on Antoine's telescope, so it matched the parameters and the settings from Fort Davis. And so if you were using both of the telescopes, then the setup would be very similar, and so there wouldn't be too much difference between the two. And let's see. So we had here's a few objects from our southern telescope, and let's see. This is Centaurus A, and of course, the great advantage of having a telescope in Chile is that from your home, from your apartment, you could be imaging or working on objects that we would never be able to see in the northern hemisphere, unless you travel down there or unless you bought into a remote telescope. And so the Statue of Liberty Nebula, it was quite exciting to have this telescope in Chile. Initially, we had talked a little bit. There were some suggestions of having our first remote telescope in Chile, and we decided that doing something outside of the country would have been much harder than trying to do something domestically, just in terms of setting it up, maintenance, and things like that. So we initially stuck with trying to get a hosting site in the Southwest, which eventually worked out. And since Antoine already had his telescope set up in Chile, then we didn't have to really go through the whole setup procedure, which is nice. And he's in contact with the hosting people in Chile to do any kind of maintenance on his telescope and keep things in good shape. This is one of the more well-liked images that came out of the Southern Telescope of M83. And one thing that I mentioned earlier that the Sky and Telescope article was about a lot of the collaboration that we're doing. So some of the members got together and they decided to pool the time that they received on the telescope. Initially, we were giving 2 nights a week to each of the members that signed on to the telescope, and that left roughly about 10 days in each month where, in case there was weather on one of your 2 days, we can kind of fit you in on another day. And as it turns out, there were sometimes, depending on people's schedules, there'd be several days open during a month that you could just grab, send a message. We've got a Discord server that everybody communicates on, and they just send a message saying, is anybody using tonight? It looks free. And if people say go ahead and use it, then they'll jump on it. So 3 of the members, Andrew, David, and Chirag, they pulled their time for 1 month to image just this the Running Chicken Nebula. I'm not sure what the catalog number is. I forgot what that was. And so they managed to essentially got 3 times as much data, and then they all processed it together and produced this one image. So it was a great way to collaborate with people. Everybody sort of knows each other within the club anyway, so good way to collaborate with friends and producing a really deep look at some of the objects. And of course, in the southern hemisphere, we were able to get objects that we can't normally see up here in the northern hemisphere. Here's a little chart that kind of gives you an example of some of the numbers that we're producing. Of course, the largest one we've done so far is the Large Magellanic Cloud. It's a 6-panel mosaic, and so it spans quite a big area, and I think it's up to 266 hours of exposure time now. A lot of that is concentrated on different parts of the cloud, but the entire number of hours adds up pretty much. And then you could see the Angel Nebula and Tarantula is at 80 and 73 hours. So we've been getting some pretty high numbers on and the amount of data that we can get in the telescopes. A lot of people will combine their time with other people, and we've got a member named John Williams who's managed to automate a lot of the targeting, so that if there's one night that's that for some reason no one is on the telescope, it'll go through a sequence on selected targets and just image those targets depending on where they are in the sky. And so we kind of have a library that we keep adding and adding to certain images, and then he'll release it into the library for people to look at and to process. Another one thing we really wanted to do is try to get some students involved, or a little bit of outreach. And Alfredo Villegas has been working on exoplanet research with some college students from the City University of New York through a program at the American Museum of Natural History. With the main astronomer there had a group of students. They were interested in exoplanet research. So Alfredo was talking to them saying, well, we could use the Gateway remote telescope, both of them actually, to do images, and then that you could do the exoplanet research. So turns out there's of course there's even newer software now that can help you out. There's something called ExoSpies software. I think that's the name of the company, and they make software that you essentially take a whole series of images of the suspected exoplanet target, and then it'll do a lot of the analysis. And so here's essentially a report from the Gateway North telescope, the one in Texas, and you could kind of see the light curve, the enlargement on the lower right-hand graphic, and you could see the light curve dimming as the planet goes in front of the star, and then getting brighter as the planet moves away from the star. So these students were able to do the exoplanet research on a couple of stars. This is from the Gateway South telescope. It sounds like if they do about an hour to 2 hours worth of imaging on a target, that seems to be enough in terms of enough data to produce a graph that'll show the transiting of the planet. And so at the end of several months, they produced a paper, and so the paper was submitted to the Journal of the American Association of Variable Star Observers. So Alfredo is listed as one of the authors, and the AAA at the very bottom, our telescope, and the hosting site are listed as contributors to the paper. So that was exciting for us to have that done. I'll show you a little bit of our website. I'm just going to end this slideshow for a second. And let me go to the landing page for the Gateway Remote Telescope. Looks like this, and we've got, bless you, we've got a little advertisement for our Sky and Telescope article in the May issue, and then various tabs that will get you to different parts of the website. This is all part of, if you go to AAA.org and just click on the Gateway button, it'll get you to the Gateway section of the website. We've got a gallery that'll show off some of the pictures. News tells you about the latest uploads that we have to the library. And AAA is a 501c3. We're a nonprofit organization, and so we're also soliciting donations both to the project, to the club as a whole, and you can also donate directly to Gateway to help us cover the costs of the peer rental. So we have a little slideshow of the images, and then some images and information about the telescope. Uh, so it's nice to be able to show off the two telescopes, and the fact that we have two is it's pretty amazing. I think in 2023, those first few months, we weren't really sure how long this would take, and then all of a sudden we had one and then two telescopes. So it was for us, it's just kind of astonishing that everything worked out pretty well. The other a lot of the deep sky imagers are active on Astrobin, so we've got a Astrobin group. We've got Gateway North is one of them. So if you go to AAA Gateway North, you could see a lot of the images that the people who are active on Astrobin have posted, and there's also a Gateway South, so that it kind of covers both of the telescopes. And if you're on Astrobin, you could easily look up those groups, and there'll be a spotlighted image, plus a lot of the recent images that have been uploaded. And let's see. Yeah, that is the question was is there a plan for a Gateway East or another location? And we had been talking a little bit about Europe, and I think the remote setups in Europe aren't as common as here in the U.S. That and Antoine's kind of working on that. Antoine is French, and he's worked with people both in France and in Spain. Spain is, I think, our one of the more logical places in terms of the weather, sort of like going to the southwest. But that would be a great idea. We kind of we have an idea from one of the members who's from the northern part of India, and so he's saying, well, my father has some land up there, and his father's early career was in astronomy, so he knows about astronomy, and he said we could build an observatory there, and we can install whatever telescopes we want. And in terms of the time difference, that would be fantastic, I think. So in India, Australia is another place that we had been thinking about, because then you could do daytime programs, especially for schools, like around noon, early afternoon, and it'd be middle of the night in a place like Australia, be late at night in India. So that's sort of a little far in the future right now for us, I think, but it's something that I think we'd like to think about, because it'd be kind of fascinating to have that kind of an outreach program where you could show students just what's happening in the sky right now, because in that part of the Earth it's nighttime, and you could see the stars, but that'd be a great program, I think. Yeah, in terms of what's driving the people who are letting us use the telescope, John Kasianowicz is just a very unusual amateur astronomer. I think I'm not sure where he got his money, because after talking to him for a while, turns out he's got a pretty large amount of equipment, and a bunch of it is in the Fort Davis, the West Texas site. And he said he kind of likes the idea of setting things up, that he's not hugely interested in actually using it for some reason, but he's perfectly fine with letting other people use it. He's pretty happy doing that, and so as long as he'll let us do that, then we're definitely like to do that, because we're just paying the peer rental fee. We have actually no investment in the equipment itself, other than the small telescope that Antoine donated and the camera. And Antoine's setup in Chile, I think he was thinking of taking it down because he couldn't really afford the peer rental anymore. and he asked if we were interested in using it. So once we took it over, then he could just leave it there. He didn't really have to do anything because the people at the site help do the maintenance. A refractor is very low maintenance anyway, and so that helps quite a bit. So we've just been lucky in running into two very generous people who are letting us use their equipment, and I think I mean Antoine's part of the AAA club, so it kind of stays within the club. John was new to us, but like I said, he seems pretty happy to allow us to use it, and that the more we use it, the happier he is, and then he's pretty also happy doing any kind of maintenance or fixing problems, things like that. So we've just been pretty fortunate in that.
All right, we are going to have the question and answer session at the end. That way I can hand the mic to you, to people who have the questions, so the online people can also hear questions.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. And let's see, in terms of price uh, for the users themselves. So we I guess this last cycle we raised the price. So this is the if you wanted to actually operate the telescope. So this is about $125 a month, $1,500 for a year for either the north or the south telescope. And we made a deal where if you sign on to both, for $2,000 you have access to both telescopes. And this is to actually operate the telescope. That you have to go through a training session on Nina with Linda, and once you're through that, and a lot of people who sign on at this level have already done some work with remote telescopes, and they actually might know Nina a fair amount. But once they do the training session, then they could go on the telescope. You could point it anywhere you want. You could set up the exposures any way you want, and whatever filters you want to use. And we, like I said, initially we try to make sure everybody has at least 2 nights a month, and most of the time you could actually get more a month. The price looks a little bit high initially when you think about it, but we tried to do a comparison, which is really difficult to do, because each of these online remote telescope sites that are both selling data and doing other things, the prices are all there's no set parameter for the price, and so they price it at all different kinds of levels, and so it was really tough to try to figure out how does this compare to Gateway. And the one thing is that there's almost no telescope out there that will let you run the telescope, and so that this is one unusual thing, I think. Especially for the bigger companies, you can't go on and you can't sit at your desk and run the telescope. They run it for you. They essentially do the imaging, they produce the data, and they send you the data. And a lot of the prices that they charge are per object, and it could cost anywhere from almost $100 for one object. And depending on the quality, if the higher quality, they often charge you more, and sometimes up to $300 to $400 for a really high quality telescope. So the Gateway. We're starting out with 2 astrophysics refractors, which are probably some of the best that you can get, with 2 very good cameras, and so we're always starting at a pretty high level, and then for the supernova level, the operator level, you can actually operate the telescope. So that's to us, that's a huge advantage to the members that sign on to the telescope. With the there's a second tier level called Nebula, and that as well as the operator, the supernova level, you have access to all of the data, which doesn't exist in any remote telescope. They don't, no remote telescope will say, we have this giant library and now you have access to everything. That's what we're telling people, is you join at this level for $150 a year, which is a steal. And we keep thinking we really should raise this price, but for $150, you can have access to a huge amount of data. We're at 270 objects right now total, and that's growing by each month, and that's between the north and the south and the Saravolo data. And I think it's on the order of something like 7 to 8 terabytes of data. So our club has a pretty big Google database, and so we're apparently not in danger of filling that up, which is good. But anybody that joins at this level, and the great thing about the way that the data is managed now is that anybody who signs on at either tier level can have access to all of the raw files that are produced by the telescope in whether it's the one-shot color or all the filters, the RGB and the narrowband filters. So you can have access to all of the files, and then you could assemble it the way you want to. And John Williams has been producing master light files. So though for people who are maybe just starting out or are kind of new to the hobby, they could access this master light file, and so that they don't need to deal with the stacking or anything like that. And he's already produced a great file in a couple of different formats. One is a FITS, and I can't remember the name of the other format, so that it'll fit any of the programs that you might be able to use to process these images. So we've tried to make it easy for people who might be joining at different skill levels and trying to get those people involved. So let's see. I'll go back to one last slide. And so what we always say, we've got the best prices in the solar system. So if you've got any questions after tonight, our email is gateway@aaa.org, and one of us will get back to you and answer your question. Otherwise, just go to the AAA.org, click on the Gateway button, and that'll take you to the Gateway section of the telescope, and you can explore those pages, look at the gallery, see our latest news, see the latest data uploads and what's involved with those. And then otherwise, thanks for attending, and I could answer any questions now.
Perfect. Thank you, Stan, for another great presentation. We do have a number of online questions, so that's great. So how it works for anyone not familiar, raise your hand. I pass you the mic, and you get to say your question. And it's always good to ask the question because chances are someone might have a similar question, but not be brave enough to ask it. I'm going to start off with the first online question is if others want to do a similar project, how much did this cost in total, and how much does it continue to cost?
Let's see. Our real costs are the pier fees at each of the sites, and so the cost in Texas, it's $8,000 per year to rent a pier at the site, and that you get electricity and internet connection there, and you get a little bit of maintenance by the telescope, by the director of the observatory there, but you're in charge of installing everything. And so that's probably one of the bigger commitments, having the equipment and then installing it at the site. The site in Chile is a little cheaper. I think it's about $6,500 a year now, and so that's the cost that AAA pays. And then we try to recoup that through the membership fees that we charge for both either the operators or just the data subscribing levels.
This is definitely a group project sort of money, unless you have that much expendable income, and then support your local astronomy clubs.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Anyone out here?
Yeah. This is a pretty simple question. So, in order to join the Gateway Remote project, do you have to be a member of AAA?
Yes, we like you to join AAA. That's $45 a year, so that's not a too big of a dent. So you join AAA, and then you could join Gateway at whatever tier level you want, and then it's every year you'll get you'll get billed for the triple. Well, for both memberships, but yeah, it's just another $45.
Was the lowest tier level for the Gateway project that 150 that you showed us to acquire the data to have a right to download the data?
Yes, that's
That's
a
the
low.
base level, right?
Right. Yeah. We just have the two tier levels. That the Nebula level, which is you get access to the data, and then the Supernova level, which is the kind of the operator level, so you can actually operate the telescope, and you have access to all the data.
Thank you.
All right. Our next online question was someone was at the Northwest Jersey Amateur Astronomer and saw that you had a couple prints. They heard you had done some film-based photography in the past couple years. Was any of that film work astrophotography?
Actually, yeah. I'm working with Alan Midkiff, who's with the Northwest Group, and he has an observatory in southeastern Arizona, and he was really interested in doing the astrophotography with film. So he asked me if I could help him learn how to develop black and white film and make prints. We set up a darkroom in his observatory, and we've done a few tests earlier this year, and it actually worked. We were kind of shocked that we could, well, develop film, which isn't that difficult, but we actually made prints. And so, in other words, the little room that we had set up, it's light tight, and we were able to make a few prints. At that time we were testing on his refractor, looking toward Orion because it's big and it's fairly bright, the Orion Nebula, and we got a few nice prints, a little out of focus still, but it's kind of amazing. And I think the idea is to try to produce some of these pictures on film, kind of going back to what professional astronomers were doing especially in the early 1900s. They were doing it on glass plates, but producing these images that look much different than from today's highly processed images. And these are very simple black and white images of the objects that a lot of us are familiar with. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I had done some film photography back in college, and so not only do you have to make sure you're focused on the image you're getting through the camera and whatnot, then you also need to make sure you're focused when you're taking your negative into print format, because using the enlarger, you also have to make sure that's in focus, or everything turns out looking like a big shot of Bigfoot.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, yes, that appears to be vaguely humanoid or
right.
going by. But so that's always fun. You get more opportunities to look weird and fuzzy.
Exactly.
Anyone out here? All right. So our next online question was, what advantages are there to the older CCD camera equipment versus the newer cameras?
I'm not exactly sure. John Kasianowicz, he likes that older model camera for some reason. We realize there's a few quirks to it that have caused some problems recently, and the CMOS cameras just seem to produce a cleaner image that, well, also the sensor on Antoine's camera is a full frame 35 millimeter size, so that produces a pretty large in terms of pixels. But I think John is looking into getting a newer model CMOS camera to replace the camera on the Fort Davis telescope.
I also have a feeling it was what he got used to, and
yeah,
sometimes no, you'll pry this out of my cold dead hands,
right?
And then you're like, move on to something like, oh, this is nice.
Yeah.
So one of our online viewers answered, the Running Chicken Nebula is IC2944.
Oh, great, thank you.
So people were paying attention.
Oh, good. That'll be on the test afterwards.
Oh, please make it multiple choice, or I have no
Oh,
chance.
yes, yeah.
All right, so our next one is there a maximum amount of time you can put on one of these rigs before you need to start replacing stuff?
We're not really sure because we've only used John's for less than 3 years now. and he had it set up for quite a while before we were there. I know that I think 2 or 3 times a year he'll drive from North Carolina to West Texas to do maintenance on. He's actually has 3 setups there, and so he'll do maintenance on the one that AAA is using. Mostly things like cleaning cleaning the camera, cleaning the telescope. I think making sure all the connections are good. Probably as you people who do astrophotography, I think the most of the problems we've had are with just cables. Like a cable will be loose, and they just need to tighten it. And so the weakest part of the whole rig is the one that tends to start falling apart. And then there's like anything that's sort of just sitting out in a location, and you're not paying attention to it every minute. All these quirky things happen. They're shutting off the computer, turning the computer back on, rebooting it, doing all this and that. I see all the messages on Discord as people are kind of working through problems, and usually the problem gets solved, and then people are on their way each night doing the imaging. But it kind of can vary from each rig to each rig.
If they join as part of the Gateway program, this is actually one of my questions. Do they get access to that Discord, or is that
oh yeah, it's
like a closed group of friends that?
It's all the Gateway users. So when you join Gateway, we send out an email with various instructions on what to sign up for. One of them is Discord. We encourage people to sign up for Discord because one of the members was pretty familiar, so he set it all up. I had no idea what it was at first, and so this is all new to me. But we have a lot of different channels set up. So there's one about processing, one that's a gallery channel that I encourage people to post their finished pictures to, and then I collect those and then keep updating the online gallery that we have on the AAA website. So the Discord has been very helpful, I think, for people to work through problems, and a lot of people are on it like in the middle of the night, or they'll be on their phone, so they'll answer questions in the middle of the day or at night or things like that. And I guess that's not too surprising with the astronomy community, but it's worked out really well for us.
Yeah. If you want, UACNJ also has a Discord.
Okay.
For online people, there's if you hit ! socials in Twitch, I know it should bring up the command. For people on YouTube, if you go into our About section, there should be a Linktree link there, and you can find the Discord. But if you want to post any of your work or whatnot, or share anything, feel free to share it on our Discord. I'm always interested in seeing the fun things. I finally got APOD to work.
Oh, good.
So
yeah, that's a good one.
all right. Anyone over here? All right. Online people, get your questions in. I like to give you a little bit of a last call, because by the time you hear this, we're already a couple minutes into the future, because that's how stream delay works. Let's see. Our next question. Sorry about that. You had actually answered this. Just to clarify, people who are not part of AA can purchase access to the Gateway remote telescopes, and I believe that was no. You do have to become a member of AAA.
Yes, if you're not a member now, it's very easy to sign up to join AAA, and then you could just sign up for Gateway in the same during the same process.
Yep. I know for UACNJ, our membership includes various tasks or whatnot. Was there anything that besides the membership fee, they need to do to become a member, or like expectations that they're going to help on public nights or whatnot?
No, we don't have a setup like UACNJ. So if you become a member, you could do as little or as much as you want. And if we are actually looking for people who have various skills to help out both in Gateway and in the AAA as a whole, but it's not a requirement.
I figured I'd ask because I know a couple of our online people are nowhere near New Jersey or New York or even PA. So they might find that interesting that they can join a not local club.
We've actually had some very active members join Gateway because they were doing internet search for remote telescopes, and it popped up, and they said, "Oh, this looks interesting." And because I usually ask people when they join, I said, "How did you hear about us, and whereabouts do you live?" And most people live in the greater New York City area, and then I found out there's some people. Well, one of the very active members lives in Chicago, and there's another member in Arizona who's quite active, and so people from all over. And that's the great thing about a remote telescope is that you don't have to be, you could be anywhere. You don't have to be in a specific city, and so you could join Gateway from wherever you are and participate on the remote telescope.
All right, so that looks like that did it for online questions. Just last check. Any questions out here? Ooh, perfect.
So, as opposed to the actual some of these hosting sites where they have multiple telescopes, I take it we're talking about two. There's a northern one and a southern one.
Right.
Do you anticipate that there will be too much crowding of people that want to have access to controlling the telescopes? So far, I imagine you have a certain number of members that have access to control the telescope, but they're competing for time, aren't they?
Right. So far, we haven't had that problem. We capped it at 10 operators per telescope because with 10 people maximum, we thought we can guarantee each person 2 days a month, and then there'd be like I said about 10 days or so each month that are flexible, and that those can be used in case somebody's night is clouded out or the roof doesn't roll off, so that and so far we haven't reached that maximum number of operators per telescope, so that's worked out well.
Do you anticipate reaching that anytime soon?
I don't think so. I mean, if anybody here is interested in joining at that level, at the operator level, we definitely have slots open on both telescopes. The like I said, the southern one has been very popular just because even if you've got your own rig here, you could see northern objects from where we live more or less. But of course the southern ones then are much harder to get to.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
And I would imagine with the membership fees and whatnot, once you start hitting that, you also then have the money already kind of cashed to then go, we need another one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's always somebody's always thinking, I'm the main administrator, so I kind of don't want any more work. but I think like we were talking earlier, trying to have a site on a different part of the globe, like Europe or Australia or India, I think would be fascinating just in terms of what we could do with school groups and outreach.
All right. Since it looks like, one more online question popped in. I'm not sure that word is English. Oh, no, I see. For the North Telescope, there are 2 telescopes on the mount, they understand. Are both scopes used in the project? And what are the fields of view in each telescope?
Yeah, both telescopes can be used depending on the operators if they have a particular preference. Of course, obviously they're pointed in the exact same direction, so they'll photograph more or less the same objects. I don't know the exact field of views for both of them, but the AP-175, the bigger telescope, definitely has a narrower field of view. The AT-60 is wider, so it to me it gets sort of an interesting image because it kind of gets a lot of the space around the objects. You see what else is nearby. But if you email the gateway at AAA.org email, we can give you that answer. We can give you the numbers.
Yeah, and I know we had posted the link to that direct link to this website a couple times in chat. So chances are, if you scroll up just slightly in chat, you will find that link.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, feel free to send any questions.
all right. So looks like that's it. Thank you, Stan, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, joining us here and online. I do, like I said, encourage everyone check out their website. Also check out our website, uacnj.org, for information on our member clubs, doing fun things like this, our next upcoming talks, and any other interesting news that we have. Also, our social media, Facebook, Instagram, Discord server, like we mentioned. Do follow those. Hit those like and subscribe buttons on Twitch and YouTube. It does help us continue our goal of outreach and sharing our love of space and astronomy with everyone. And with that, until next time, clearer skies than we're currently having because it's completely fogged out, and good seeing.
Thank you.